Hello, 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 and welcome to another One Lion of Code. I am One Lion, and today is Friday. Happy Friday to the many, the bunches of you that there is and are, and am. Stalling for time, clicking the add button, and in 3 seconds, you know what happens on Friday? TBD knows what happens on Friday. It's Community Day, and the bot is now up just in time. One more thing to do is to refresh this thingy here. Refresh. Okay. It's Community Day, and Community Day on our channel means that I am opening up a voice channel in Discord for any of you who are interested in bringing up topics, conversations, whatever is relevant to the content of this channel and the viewers. And yeah, anything that you want to talk about, you can do so in Discord voice channel. Just join any of the stream rooms, probably the stream waiting room, and then you can type !waiting, and that'll let me know that you are in a voice channel waiting for me to pull you into the actual stream. It's kind of like a backstage. Nice. Very nice. 8,000 points for you. And if I turn on my virtual camera, go into the stream room, turn on the camera there, and that'll make it so that you can see me live in Discord, and we'll just use Discord for voice and video. That way you can still have the stream open, but mute it, and you'll be able to see in real time what's on my screen. That way, if you want to talk about something in specific, like a project that you're working on, or just anything that requires a visual, you'll see it in real time without the stream lag. Until then, I haven't connected the LLM yet. I forgot to do that. Hey, Thyrobius, can you wake up Automated Realms, please? One moment, please. Okay, we're still on the intro screen. We can go to desktop. Let me move some stuff out of the way first. So I have been doing my day job. I've gotten back to being at my standing desk more often again, and I'm really glad for it. At least it didn't tell me to get good. Are you so upset that it's not berating you for your efforts? Go here. I don't know where we're going. I'll just keep that open there. Come on, load. This background is making me dizzy. Okay, I am connecting the... I bet you it crashed the bot. What am I looking for? Open Orca, load the models, go back here, refresh, back to here, or here for the first time, I guess. Automated Realms. Warning. Stream has started. You're a little late. No. I mean, yes, but no. Jerk. Stop spoofing people. Clear history. Okay, we're starting fresh. Oh wow. What did you do? Trying to impersonate people. Oh, Peter. Hi, Tom. It's nice to meet you. Are you here to promote your latest movie? Nice. You'll believe anything, won't you, Automated Rooms? No, history is here now. Thank you for clarifying, Tom. It's good to be safe and report imposter. Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Anyway, while I wait for any interested yes, we have interested members. All right, I'm pulling you into the room. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello. Oh my gosh, that's really tiny. That's what she said.
Welcome, tbdgamer.
I need to turn you up in my ears. You guys are great on the stream. Your volume is good on the stream. I just needed to turn you up in my ears.
Welcome to all of us. I will say I'm gonna get off the stream pretty quick because I have no food and I need to procure food for lunch. It is lunchtime for me, and I'm going to waste.
You're going to waste. Don't waste. I mean, don't fall apart. I just had a ice cream kind bar. Yeah, they're good. They're so good.
I missed the stream this morning because I had a doctor's appointment.
Yeah,
the doctor's.
I mean, I don't think it's missed because you told us you weren't going to stream this morning.
Yeah, but I missed the stream because I missed doing the stream as well. But the doctor's like, yeah, you need to lose weight, so no carbs on days that you exercise. Like,
I'm on that. Yeah, we can talk about diets forever.
I'm like, okay, but I do karate 6 days a week. So you're telling me no carbs in my diet?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Like, what do I do? Because my diet consists of carbs.
Yeah. How are you going to get energy to do the thing?
Yeah. I have to adjust some.
It works if you're strict on the no carbs. You don't have to be ultimate, like just no bread, no delicious fruit, and no sugar ever.
No carrots, no broccoli, no apples.
Really?
No apples, but broccoli I have. Does
broccoli and carrots are carbs. They're basically the same as pasta.
Well, carrots are disgusting. So,
but broccoli as well. Because I like broccoli and carrots. He went, yep, carbs, no.
All right, ignore your doctor.
Well, I have good reason for you to ignore your doctor. Well, no, he's just telling you to diet, so never mind.
Well, so the reason being that I am overweight and I have severe sleep apnea. So right. I have the machine for the sleep apnea. Well, the machine is blowing me up like a balloon. So I've got to have that adjusted. But it's like the best way of kind of easing the sleep apnea is to lose a lot of weight. So I need to lose about 70 pounds. I'm like, okay, that sounds fun.
Jeez. I lost 70 pounds since university. It's possible. It's doable. You can do it.
I was about 190 pounds. Then I moved to the US, and then I was 300 pounds.
Yeah.
After not too long.
I weighed 125 pounds from like, I don't know, my freshman year of high school until my freshman year of college. And then I was suddenly 180 pounds and then suddenly 250 pounds.
Yeah. I'm 6'2".
Google, which is a better authority than your doctor, says
okay.
2 grams of net carbs, and you start counting net carbs because fiber counts as carbs, but you don't count them.
Gotcha.
So 2 grams
And
of
resistive
net
carbs.
per net carb.
You can have resistive carbs where if you cook pasta or something, refrigerate it overnight, and then eat it the next day.
I don't subscribe to that. We now have to.
That's called science, though.
That's cold pasta, and I can't eat pasta on its own because it makes me gag. It's just so cold pasta.
Well, yeah. Well, it's not going to be cold. I mean, you reheat it, but it makes the carbs resistive. But you don't like pasta, or
if pasta doesn't come with meatballs and sauce, I'm not eating it.
Wow.
Oh, dude,
DFlux streams.
So
apparently he didn't hear you.
The reason I attend today is because I no longer have a team.
Oh.
I fly solo now.
You fly solo.
Awesome.
Could you turn your mic? I'm gonna turn you up a little bit in Discord. But,
my mic.
Yeah, you're a little quiet.
No, you're fine. No, don't adjust your mics. I adjust your mics for the stream. You guys adjust Discord audio for yourself.
I'm just going to talk over y'all because I can't hear y'all very well, but it's just it's like a 50%. Maybe I can find a volume bar. Anyway.
If you right click a user, you can adjust the user's volume.
Yeah. Do that.
Sadly, because I in real life.
I equalize you guys while you're in Discord, and then if you turn up your mics and well, I mean you can. I'll just turn you down. That's all. But I have you turned up like to 167% TBD, which does mean that your mic is kind of quiet. Yeah.
This is the normal stream setup.
Yeah.
Oh.
I believe you.
It could be. Is it possible that you would just turn that in Discord?
Well, I have you also turned up to 150 DFlux.
Yeah, it's possible. Oh, you do? So I can apparently do that. So right now I just have my microphone.
Yeah.
My volume's at 1.5
and then I have Peter at 94%.
Wow. Will be your input volume, surely.
Well, input volume's maxed out in Discord.
Oh, okay. All right, I just turned mine to 100%. My volume was on 50. Should I turn it back down to 50 while one line?
No, you're good. I'm adjusting your volume as long as you're consistent.
I won't touch it anymore, I promise.
That's crazy.
I never play with all these settings.
I'm gonna turn my machine.
So what did y'all do this week? TBD, I've never spoken to you, so hello. What did you do this week, work-wise? I don't care about your life, you know.
Don't tell me about going out and eating.
Well, this week was a bit of a sad and a bit of a
exciting
week for me.
Yeah.
So I got a promotion, but it came at the cost of 30% of the engineers being laid off.
You were the one getting the okay. I
have a bit of survivor guilt this week.
Yeah, fair enough.
And but I've been promoted to staff engineer.
All right.
So I get to dictate more architectural things for the company going forward. So including potentially introducing .NET tools and whatnot.
All right.
Yeah. Quite a lot of.
So looking forward to it and survivor guilt. So I shouldn't have asked you, is what I understand. I should. It's a little sensitive.
But I think it's something that's relevant to all. I mean, Intel. Look at what happened to them today. They dropped 15,000 staff.
That didn't do anything.
The tech industry is up and down. Yeah.
Oh, did that come through? That's probably why I had it turned down.
I heard a clink. It came through, and your words came through.
Oh, okay, good. I'm still recovering slightly from, I think, COVID.
Oh, jeez. You should get tested if you think COVID. That way you keep everyone else safe, too.
Well, I work from home, and I haven't got any friends, so I don't have to worry about that.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah. Presumably, you had the big symptoms a few days ago, right?
No, so I'm
also a doctor. doctor.
Yeah, I mean, I know that because
Dr.
you have
Google.
Google, right? So yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I am better than your doctor. But seriously, just allow some carbs and just look it up every time. You can also get the.
I'm good with allowing carbs. I'm good at that.
Okay. I'm just. So.
That's
Excellent.
that's the cure. No, I've got like this cough that won't go away.
Yeah.
That could be
Cookie dough.
mono too. Mono?
Yeah,
Is that the
that's what I
one?
say. It could be. It could be a lot of things.
Yeah, you should get tested.
My
Just
thing
in
is,
case.
well, my thing is, I've just switched to a new job, and so the medical insurance hasn't quite kicked in yet. I don't think.
Oh.
I don't actually know the rules on this because I'm not actually officially an adult. But
You don't. You don't have the card. You can.
I don't know how to do this
call your
adulting
HR or
thing.
whatever. Have you? You did join. Yeah. You can like call and get. They just need your group number and your ID. See, I am a doctor. I know everything.
you
I've
sound more
also-
like the insurance adjuster that's trying to get out of paying for medical services.
Yeah,
Do you have a-
that's been 2 of my jobs. So basically,
There you
yes.
go. Yeah, that's a big profession in the United States.
Yeah, it is. Good times. I will be leaving in 14 minutes.
Well, what did you
because-
do this week then?
You know what's funny is I can't remember.
was gonna say-
There was an Azure outage, and that took a lot of
Right.
time to just deal with and like try and piece together. They were pretty good about.
Well, was there a lot of news articles to read?
The Azure status page was updated. It was incredible because about 3/4 of the time they don't update the status page by the time it matters.
3/4 of the time, the Azure outage affects the Azure status page.
That was an Amazon one. The S3 buckets weren't working, and so Amazon status page stopped working, which was hilarious. But Azure's status page, no, it was doing great, and we use a service called Azure Front Door,
Mhm.
which is a pretty good one. And we're using, and I don't know what happened, but they apparently got DDoSed, and their DDoS prevention affected the whole service. So
Essentially,
basically
the
brought us-
DOS worked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So the DDoS prevention didn't work, is what it sounds like. Yeah.
And if we had not been using the service, which we do for security reasons, we would have been better off. And I think about this kind of stuff, all these, security tools, CrowdStrike taking down half the world. I just hate it. I hate all of it, but they're required to pass audit. So that's what you do.
Yep, absolutely. So you actually been pretty busy then, by the sounds of it. It's just busy trying to keep where you're at, basically, which doesn't feel like progress.
That's every week, but yes. So we survive, and I cannot remember all the things I've done. Some other fires popped up, which I will not go into detail about. Setting up we haven't automated some of the stuff. I'm going to try and be vague, but we have a thing like y'all know about like Terraform and all these services and whatnot. We don't use that for the biggest thing we run. So we have a PowerShell script that someone wrote over 5 years ago, and it still mostly works. It still works because I've been keeping it, but there's a lot of non-automated stuff I got to do. So that's been a lot of stuff too. Anyway, it's a lot of boring clicking around in Azure.
You gotta
Portal.
automate that stuff. You gotta get with Mojo, and I've been learning a little bit about he's
Aspire.
using Aspire, right? He's been using Aspire for his stuff, which is really interesting.
I agree.
Where's the big show?
Mojo says, "Oh hi" in chat.
Oh, there you go. He's in chat.
I'm
I'm
sure.
actually trying to focus a little bit because I've got to do a little bit of work. I've found myself spinning my wheels a lot of this new job. So I have stand up in 30 minutes. So I'll just give you a heads up for that. So I'll be dipping out for that. Is it in 30 minutes? The other thing that I like about this new company, just to share, is the fact that they have their own on-premise Exchange server. So, and they don't have Teams or anything, so I have to like constantly check the calendar because that's the only way to know the Zoom meeting. But the Zoom meeting is, I don't have like a Zoom account. It's not like Teams where like it notifies you, so you have to like go open the calendar invite, click the Zoom like the minute before. So it's a little bit, I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Yeah, it's a bit much. And then for whatever reason, Outlook, whenever you click that Zoom link, Outlook assumes you've changed the calendar invite. So for every single meeting, I have to like don't save changes for the calendar invite every single time I open every single meeting.
That's weird.
It's yeah. So this is a exchange on-prem exchange. I didn't think that was actually too much even of a business anymore to have on-premise exchange. But
I mean, like in the place that I was working at with Sagetti, the client, they had the same thing, but none of the calendar stuff did stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sounds like a user problem. I'm joking.
It's no. I assure you, it's not, because even my boss bitched about it too. He's like, "This is ridiculous." Because me and him are on the same sort of page where we spoke about it, and I could gripe a little bit about my job, but there's no reason why we can't move to Office 365. We're a medium-sized business. We're not an enterprise, so why do we have our on-prem exchange server for what is essentially about 200 employees? Yeah, which I think is overkill. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. You guys probably have more experience than me in that sort of direction.
My best guess, knowing why we still run a lot of things, is because they just never changed it, because there's no time on the schedule to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and things like email ultra suck to move, because then everyone has their personal mailboxes, and who knows if they're pulling them offline, and yeah, it'll suck. But so be it. It's worth it, I think. Like Teams, as much as people dump on Teams, we've adopted part of it and stuff, and it's got a lot of convenient features.
I much prefer it to Zoom. You do that much, just on the fact that like someone puts something in chat in Zoom, then after the meeting that chat's now lost forever.
That's true of the Google one too, by the way. Google Meet does the exact same thing.
Yeah. Whereas Teams, I can at least reference the chat for the meeting, and just small stuff like recording the meeting. Tons of stuff. Well, that's by the by. I will bitch about my new employer for a little bit, just for a few seconds. Maybe I am. Well, I want to think I'm wrong. I want you guys to convince me that I'm wrong, but I think I'm right deep down. Maybe it's overreacting sort of thing, but they have right now. I'm working on a page. And in order to load the page, I have to like make a database call and then read the table, and that table has like the list of components and the type of components and like the CSS for that component in the SQL database itself. And then that's what I use to construct the page in Blazor. This is
so they did CMS, right? Like they're building a CMS. Sounds like.
Well, so that was one of the questions I asked, which is like, oh, you guys want to do this just because, you'd like your middle managers to basically go ahead and like edit the tables, add some rows, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, no. We want to be able to do that as the software developer. I'm like, well, why can't you just change the code? And like, well, we prefer, because then you got to like do a get, and then you got to do a PR, and that's like long. We'd rather just change the database. I'm like, yeah, those PRs, they're there for a reason.
This is the classic putting the code into the database because it's easier to change the database. You're not supposed to touch production, so that would be a culture change. Or I mean, I'm with you though, but like,
so here's a question.
There's a clear reason why.
Here's a question. I call that fat client or thick client, where basically the database is the king, right? And everything about the app and what it's supposed to display, what it's not supposed to display, the user permissions, all that stuff is stored in the database. That's what I would consider that a fat client. Do you have a different term you would use to describe that development approach, where you're like storing things like CSS and names of things in the database?
Data-driven development,
I mean, like dynamic UI.
Dynamic is the word they use.
Yeah, it fell out of favor. You know what's dynamic is updating the code and put, to the point.
CI/CD, you
So-
mean?
Yeah, some of that stuff. By the way, I haven't been reading chat.
So that's
Yeah,
how you guys
changing-
would approach the conversation. Is you know what else is dynamic CIDC? That's basically how you would tackle that.
No, I mean they outnumber you, right? So like,
Oh,
if you own
Yeah.
this thing or what? Are you gonna own
no,
this
no,
thing?
that they outnumber me. This is so. I mean, this is what I'm working on right now. There's a lot that's, you know, and I one online. You're entirely responsible for this problem because
Yeah.
I officially use your financial manager app as the gold standard constantly. Anytime I like, how can I
Such a
improve my
bad-
side project?
You do
Well,
realize
so-
that I'm mostly distracted when we're doing the project, right?
Yeah. Well, I want you to know that I'm still like, when I look at my side project, I'm like, man, if only I had the skill and time to make it look like the financial management app. So, you know, you know, well, needless to say, there's plenty there. So that I do, I reference, I say that's my goal. I do, I look at that and say, how does one online tackle this issue? And then that's the basis that I go by. So it's all your fault, just to shift the blame.
Oh,
Uh,
OUX?
I don't think you're
What's
gonna
that?
win. You're not gonna win the argument because you're out.
You know, it's like, rather than like using icon, there's lots of little small things. It's like not so bad, but not so good. Like for instance, they every single time you load any component, they manually read from disk the app settings.json file and then pull records from it 3 times. So they're reading from disk for every component, which I can't think is good for performance, especially if you could just inject iConfiguration and read from memory. I would assume that would be better. That, and they don't use, they have a component library, you know, raised class library, but they don't want to set up the routes. So that every component that has a route, the page at, has to live in the actual like project, and then inside it points to the component, which is a little bit, I don't know, weird. So just a couple little things, I guess. But no, yeah, the whole like pulling from the database and using the database and changing the database in order to change the UI, to me, looking at one line's example, look at my history, is like that's not like bad taste, or that's not like a design choice. That's just like, to me, bad software development. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
just
I mean, I
misunderstanding
could
software
see
development.
cases for it where if it's essentially static content that's being populated by the database, it's hard for me to say that, then I guess, you know,
Again,
like the
so
content doesn't
it
actually
was-
change often.
If it was a CMS, it'd have a valid reason to
Yeah.
some extent.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
not
thank
being
you.
used as CMS, it's being used as a bypass of code control.
Of deploying actual.
Right. Yeah. This
Yeah.
is just I'm building essentially I'm building like 50 forms, I guess. I'm building a bunch of different forms that, depending on what users logged in and when and how,
Right.
there's
And I
what
have
ought to be
seen
shown.
that. I've seen that often. As far as like for managing forms, that the content of the form depends on which form it is, and there's like 1,000 forms, and you want to be able to update the form on the fly. Like
Yeah.
you do that in the
I don't mind.
database in the UI updates.
Right. I don't mind like I don't mind necessarily like things like let's say you have a for each loop over a table that tells you all the forms you want displayed. That's fine. It's more like the actual like contents of the form itself.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean too. So like here,
Yeah.
Real quick, we got Twitch chat. Fuel, and I'm gonna just say Snable because that's how you
Foolish
pronounce
Snabble.
it. Yeah. There are good use cases for dynamic UI. I mostly don't agree. I like model-driven UI. Mojo says object-oriented.
Yeah, and I haven't heard of
user
that.
Experience. I don't think it's real. Fuel says at least not 7 times. You didn't read your config. So this I agree with. Disk, when you're reading your config multiple times per component. Disk is surprisingly quick if the data is cached. I don't think that data is cached. Oh, the file system typically caches data, I guess. I don't know what just T4 it means. But
T4 is a
anyway.
templating, so you just template the form and then you feed it. Here are the things you should display, and then it'll generate the form code for you. So it's kind of like code gen. Well, do your stand up.
All right. Well, this week I was hyper productive. I had 17 meetings, but in between I was at my desk and really got a good feeling, you know? Just so there you go. That's it, and no blockers.
Zoom. Craziness. I'm grabbing this link from Mojo.
Yeah, I ironically posted the same thing, so I googled it. So I guess it is a thing.
Oh, I just need to find out which browser. Let's pick this one. Do I have any of this browser open over here?
But does it say? I mean, this is what it's called, right? But Mojo, is this standard to say use a database, or is this just a type of way of doing? I don't necessarily see anything here that says, and you must use SQL. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is just a way of doing dynamic pages.
Yeah. So the description of the project that I've seen that uses this kind of a database approach where you store a JSON that says these are the fields and the order that the fields display, use this form layout or whatever. That was all done for like a medical system, and they have different forms based on whether you're a new patient, you're a transferring patient, you're a referral, a whole bunch of different types of forms based off of those. And so they have all of the forms stored in a database, but the thing is that the customer is the one that is maintaining the forms and the fields that appear on those forms. So it makes sense if you're creating a product that you're giving to someone else and they have to dynamically adjust what content is on there. But if you guys are the ones maintaining the content and the UI and all that, then it doesn't really make that much sense to do it this way, except that you get to skip the deploy step. You don't have to go through this entire deploy thing. You just change the database and it's updated.
Yeah, I was thinking that because they also don't do unit tests yet, so I was gonna build them a unit test. I was gonna be a dick about it and make the first unit test like a unit test to make sure that no one's changed the database, so it fails if someone removes anything from the database without like checking if it runs in the code first. And I didn't. So that forces their hand to do like a code change. But yeah, no. So that was a little bit of that. No, I think maybe attacking it like the way I see it is like a fat client. That's probably the best term. I don't know. And to say, look, the industry has sort of moved away from storing the stuff in the database. Because I think it's significantly more work to have to like load it from the database, and it's not. Then I'm gonna. When I do the stand 130, I have it like question, which is a lot of the details that I need aren't in the database in terms of if you want this to be truly dynamic, right? That's what they're asking for. They want to just say what they want to do is like they make a new table or something and then just like apply my same code to it and then boof, it's done. I'm like, I don't think you can't do it that way. Like small stuff like laying the address out, right? So it makes sense with like, you want sometimes you want the zip code to be to the right of this other box. All that kind of stuff you can't do if you're for reaching over a predefined way of doing text box.
Well, not necessarily, but yeah. It depends on how you build, because again, this is sounding a lot like a content management system. Why did that hit twice? That was weird. Content management system where you're allowing this customization by storing objects in a database, essentially. So you define the layout based off of the structure of the objects. The objects themselves have to be descriptive enough to say, this is how I'm formatted, this is what this field should look like when it's displayed. How many are in this given row? How many elements are in this row? How many fields can people fill in? Does this one have a feedback link? Does it have help text? All that stuff. And then you can even customize the icon that might show for it, or a picker, whatever. Yeah. It's just, it doesn't jive well with me because I like to do that in code, but
yeah, so do I, and that's where it's like for me, it's like it's so much easier to do just a good CI/CD flow than it is to try and find all these reasons to get out of doing a PR. That seems to be more work overall.
I agree.
Mhm.
TBD,
But yeah, so
any extra thoughts?
Not really. I mean, DFlux and I kind of talked about the whole.
We did, yeah.
A bit the other day. I mean, I think I agree. I feel it's just a way of getting around something. Is that, and like live coding said, you know, that you're outnumbered. You're not going to change it necessarily.
Mhm.
The best you can do is kind of implement things as you go that kind of show them a different way of doing things, maybe.
Yeah, and I do have the cards really. I do have them stacked against me. The other thing that they have a lot of, which perhaps and you can, I asked TBD about, was their data structure. They seem to have lots of databases with not a lot of data, not a lot of tables inside those databases. So rather than like having like 4 or 5 databases with different like purposes, they have like 20 or 30 databases, all with like 6 to 10 tables inside them, or maybe more. There's some more complex ones, but which again, I don't really have terms to describe. Is that like a database approach you've seen, or is there a reason why people want to go that way? Is there like a performance thing? Have you ever seen?
I wouldn't think it's very performant myself, because it has to do a database lookup every time it wants to draw UI, get UI stuff.
No, I meant more to do with like the actual like having lots of databases that have not to do with UI, just in general.
Oh,
so they have a lot of databases with not a lot of tables in each of those databases. So they'll have like 20 databases with all like 6 to 10 tables in them, as opposed to like 5 databases with like 100 tables in them.
I mean, it could be for organization purposes, like it could be and Ninja Gloppy has a great point. We'll read that out shortly. It could be that they, instead of using schemas to separate object families, I guess we'll call them, so like tables that belong to this domain are in this schema, they're just using different databases. But Ninja Gloppy was talking about it's a performance hit because you can't do joins. You can join across databases, they just have to have access to each other, but that's even more expensive than doing a regular table join too.
Your ORM's not configured for it, or your ORM's not, you know.
Yeah, like Entity Framework doesn't support multi-context joins.
Right,
but if you have a view, for example, in a database that has access to another database, then you can join the view to your data in that.
Yeah, we have some pretty complex entity framework joins and things, and a lot of things are obviously done by stored procedure. I feel like in this scenario, because of their data structure, entity framework is kind of nerfed, because there's not a lot of stuff that you build out that isn't hitting at least 3 different databases. And so
sounds like DDMS.
It makes sense. Is that, yeah, it sounds like a stored proc would be more beneficial because it can hit 3 databases in one stored proc, or, you know, like it's like you say, a view.
Oops. Yeah, let's see if I actually have DDMS in my local. So DDMS, you remember that document management system app? It has this, which one is your base? DPRA database. I'm trying to say data, that's why it takes me so long to say it. That has this documents table. Then based off of what DB type it is, it goes to one of these other tables, but there are cases where it actually comes from a completely different database, like SBCCOM or TCM data. And so these two they have views in here that I can access the data from those. So like, I don't know where they are. Maybe they aren't there anymore. Oh yeah, I gutted a lot of it. But they would have views that pretty much in the DPRA database, because that's what I use for the DB context. I have a view that joins this documents table with that database's appropriate collection table.
Yeah, so you would
That's so
encourage
great of
doing
you.
a bunch of views, and that way you can attach entity framework to those views.
Well, I would
basically.
encourage keeping them in the same database and using schemas
Mhm.
instead.
Yeah, that's definitely an approach that they could do with using schemas. Yeah, and that again, so that's one of the things where, like you say, uphill battle a little bit, because in order to really take advantage of everything, they have, not only do they have to get teams first off, Jesus Christ, because they have like different teams, I guess, in the company. There's some use Zoom, some use like Go to Assist, some use different tools, and so it's a little frustrating. But yeah, you got to get them on teams, and they got to change the way they think about software development to not do sort of what I consider fat clients, and then they got to change the whole data structure so they can take advantage of more modern RMS. It's a little work in the minority, and do unit
Yeah.
tests, because they don't do unit tests yet. Which
And
is
that's one
I
thing
think,
that oh, go ahead. Good.
I was gonna say that's one thing that again, you've put that in the freaking financial management, so now I have to do it. So,
But that's the thing though. So one thing that I hope I mentioned, or maybe I don't know. One thing I mention often is when you are entering a new team or a new project, instead of trying to figure out how you can bring them up to the proper standards of what you know to be the right way to do things, first find out how can I work with what is here and add to this mess without making it more messy. And
Yep.
then how can we slowly move everything over to
for sure,
a better approach?
yeah. And that's where it's like, that's why I'm griping a little bit, because I am actively doing, like, I'm going through now, I'm looping over the database, I'm creating the UI components, and it's like murdering my soul inside. But if you don't see it from their perspective,
Yeah,
you'll never
that feeling.
understand. Yeah.
Oh, you feel so dirty when you're doing it. It's like, do I really have to use this approach?
Yeah, I was a little bit mean, because I think the gal I work with, she asked me like a creative question on like what should we add an additional row, because I guess that also this a couple other systems have the same form that pop to the same database, and so she's like, we should add a row to like say whether or not the form was filled out in Blazor in the database. And I'm like, that's really, oh, that's the other thing. They don't have any telemetry. I had the open telemetry discussion with them. And I'm like, I don't really want to store anything to do with that content in a database.
Yeah.
That's like telemetry information that you may
Yeah.
want to like have analytics done on.
Right.
But I don't know about like editing. Yeah. So I was like, don't ask me like creative questions in that direction. There's always going to be no. You want to tell me yes and I'll do it, but don't ask me.
So the way, like when I join a new organization, I don't hold back opinions very often, but when you join a new organization, it's really hard not to, like what I said, unleash the opinions, right? What I normally do is spend a lot of time figuring out who do I need to win over first. I don't.
Yes. Oh,
I'll
that's
like
a good one.
I'll make mention of some things, but figuring out who do I need to win over, because if you upset the wrong people early on, that can affect the trajectory going forward, because they could actually, I've had it happen where people have actively worked to interfere with my thoughts on things.
Right.
So it's worth figuring out what the lay of the land, making sure that you understand who can you get on board, who are your allies, and who can you work with to do the things you want to do. Because it's all great if you're like, yeah, I can fix this and we can improve this and we can do this, but then you become the guy. You don't ever want to become the guy.
Oh, I don't mind being the guy.
But you want to build software that you can walk away from and know that they ain't going to mess it up afterwards, and that all your effort is not wasted.
It's me, the guy.
I doubt any of us don't have a little bit of that. I'm going to say like a hero complex. You like delivering things. You like that reward of, you're awesome. You fixed everything for us. This is awesome. There's a great reward in that. I won't deny. But at
That's
the end
my
of the
super
day,
ego.
I'd rather have my ego boosted by, wow, this team is so productive because of all the changes you made. They're now like crushing the software.
Yeah, I'm definitely for sure biding my time and trying to find, like you say, you got to find the allies and the people in the room that are gonna back you even when you're not there. I'm sure, for sure, like I said, I'm griping a little bit here because I feel like a decent outlet to ask these sort of questions and sort of get a little bit of ideas about other developers' experiences. But for sure, I am biding my time and working out. Um, that is one of the problems is we do have a slight lack of leadership. It does feel like, but you know that's there's team dynamics there that are going on.
The thing that to remark on TVD's comment, the thing that I like about, and I don't purposefully do it, I don't think, it's all subconscious and my ego, like we mentioned. The thing I like about being the guy is that when I actually have that not, I don't want to use expectation, it's like they're confident in me actually doing things, and so they will just have me do everything, which is the stressful part of it. But I do the things, and when I do the things and I leave the place, I'm like, I left it better than I found it, and now they are continuing on. So I also get the thing that you were talking about, TBD, with the, you want to make this product or this development effort that the entire team can benefit from, and they're able to do an even better job. So yeah,
it's important. If you like, you also have to, from what you've said, DFlux, so far, you are more in touch than a lot of developers in that group. So you've just gone from being someone who's like, oh, I've only had a few years experience, I'm not experienced, to being the expert. So now you are if you're going to go into that role, you've got to accept that you're the leader of that initiative. You're the leader. You're the one teaching the others how to do things. So you've got to embrace that role as well. And it's a scary role to embrace.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's but yeah. Was there was a couple other things that I think that they were. I was curious. I'm struggling to remember. But yeah, one thing that I think I forget we were discussing with I think Mojo was like about right now they're using Blazor server, and I was like, hey, don't you guys want to eventually do an app or something, which we discussed about a little bit. And they're like, yeah, but Blazor server is a lot, you know, we don't want to like do it for these components because these components are going to be Blazor server only. And I feel like Blazor WebAssembly forces developers' hands to be a lot more cognizant about where they put things, and like do like proper like separation of concerns. The component that's only doing UI, like laying out the data in a separate. Because right now in the component library or they have all their database calls in the same inside the Razor class library. It's in a separate file, but it's right. And so exactly, yeah. But if it's Blazor server, you can't do that. Right? Blazor WebAssembly, you can't do that. Or if it's ever going to be an app. So that was one of the things where I'm like, you know, it'd be a good exercise just to have the WebAssembly version or even the .NET 8 version with the WebAssembly mode or whatever, the render mode in there as well. But that's again one of these areas of change where they've never done that before and they've never looked into WebAssembly. But yeah.
I think the dad jokes were equally grown worthy.
Why did the belt go to prison? He held up a pair of pants. Pow pow. Pow pow. Why do cows not have toes? They lack toes. That one was actually kind of...
Even as dad jokes, they're pretty grown worthy.
I'm still chuckling at it though. Groaning but chuckling. Got a contract, have been reading over a few website. Have been reading over for a website development. Anyway, congratulations on the contract. I am not sure what the last part means.
It's just saying, I think the project is a website development. He's been reading reading it over
Oh,
before I
like
worked
you're getting up to speed on it. You're
Yeah.
catching up on it.
That's how I read it.
Thank you. I need translators. I don't
Also-
word good.
Yeah. So the other thing is and actually one more line. You don't. How do you do telemetry? Because obviously my go-to is application
haven't
insights in Azure.
been.
You haven't been.
No, but like for the previous project, since it was a desktop app, they used the Windows Store integrated telemetry thing. So it detects when crashes happen. It doesn't really do stuff like user journeys, but it does show how long the app has stayed open, how many times do they open it, how long are they in the app, kind of stuff. But
Do they use like the event viewer, maybe?
So we did for the desktop app ourselves, and then we logged events manually to a certain event source ID, which was really dumb, but it's how it started and what they kept using. And then those would get picked up by another service and sent to their telemetry store, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Right now, the where I'm currently, they just have they store every single error into a SQL database, which again, like I said, they have heavy reliance on the database. I was like, guys, you should open telemetry and maybe one of the Azure service or something. That was another discussion I'm gonna intend on having with them, because I think telemetry does a lot more than just logging stuff. There's a lot more to
Oh
it.
yeah.
Just like the user who's logged in, who's doing what, and performance of the database connections and so on and so on.
Right.
But right now, obviously you're working on your Blazor bot, but right now, like in your stuff you're working on, what do you use in place of you don't use Azure Application Insights? Do you use anything?
Nothing at all.
But what do you do for like? I know you don't use like telemetry collection. What is your tool? Like, let's say someone comes to your app and say, "Hey, the database calls are slow." How do you determine which database calls and so on?
They aren't slow. No.
Just don't write slow queries.
Seriously. No, the main thing that happens though is someone will say the app crashed and it gave me this message that just says unable to get whatever they're looking for. And so what I would do is log into the server, because we are using EC2 instances. It's full Windows server. Go to the event logs and check to see if there's any errors in there.
I see.
Because I log errors that way using a logger, but not telemetry style logging.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty close to industry standard. Like an application that runs on Windows would log to Windows, because that could be easily, yeah,
and I have the logger in I use iLogger, of course, and then I add syncs to it so that it doesn't matter if it's running on Linux or Windows.
You had syncs to it,
so it doesn't matter if it's running on Windows. So syncs are the data stores for your logs, essentially. You could write to file, you could write to event, you could write to
in the program, like the settings in the program.cs, like where to put the logs. Gotcha.
Yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, that was one of the things that I did. Like, I have like I've read, it was I laughed inside, and it happens, where they're having a stand up, and the guy's like, "Oh, don't worry, we got this program from this other developer, and for whatever reason, this guy was logging to the system. That was silly, so I deleted all that and then logged to a database." And I was like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" Why you turned off the thing that was done and then like turned on logging to a SQL database? I'm like, oh damn. Because as far as I know, and again, you guys may educate me, log into a SQL database, that's like a modern no-no. That's relatively modern. I want to say the past 5 years. 5 years ago, perhaps, log into a SQL database was relatively normal. Today, that's like to me, a no-no.
I do very often.
Right, well, okay, so I should highlight. So there's like different types of logging of like what the application is doing. So in my previous job, there would be logs for the applications like doing the user has done this thing. Right, the user has done this thing, or this thing has been enabled, or this process is going. And so I actually spoke to my team. And I was like, "Hey, why are we actually using logging for this? Surely this is like an event log. Surely we should actually make a UI for this, so the end user can see what's going on, if something's getting held up, what's happening." And the response from the senior developer at the time, was, hey, actually, this is really good job security, because if the end user doesn't know this stuff, we can check it, and it makes us really important. And that was so there's sort of like a category of logging that actually shouldn't be actually in logs themselves, but should be like available to the end user, and we just use logging for it, like what the application is doing. But I'm talking about like errors and exceptions.
Yeah.
Best thing you do is introduce a better practice.
Because, like, I mean, if you have report services turned on, I guess it could be useful. And you're logging to a separate database than the same one that the app is using. Go ahead.
I think the biggest problem we have with the whole logging thing is it shouldn't be a crutch. It shouldn't be noisy, and we often make it too noisy with logging. So wherever you put it, yeah, I agree. Logging to the SQL database, for me, it's a no-no purely because normally developers log to the same SQL database that the app's writing to. So you're writing more frequently to the database, which is going to create problems for the application performance. Eventually, if you get to the point where like it's big enough, you're going to have application performance. Although you're in a system that has many databases making up the data and doing cross-database joins, so performance is already lacking for you.
Yeah.
For me, when I haven't done a logging pass on Liquid Sky yet because I don't know what I want to log. I don't know what's useful yet. I don't know what's going to tell me. I've debugged the problems that I've had so far, but I don't know what is useful. For me, metrics will be useful, right? How many planning items are created a minute? How many requirements are added? What changes are happening? These are things that I'll probably metricize later, but I don't really know what I want yet. And so when we create logging, we just create noise, and then it's hard to use, so people don't use the logs. So most logs become useless. So
agreed.
I think it's a tactical decision. Logging should be tactical, not reactive.
Yeah, it should be designed the same way that you would do UI, UX design, the same way that you would do application structure. Know what you're logging and don't just like throw logs in there for the sake of capturing errors. Handle the errors instead.
And again, it's another argument for things like unit testing, because if you're writing smaller pieces of code, if you're writing more testable code, the actual problems that can occur are mainly data related. So maybe you need to publish an error occurred. This is the identifier I was currently working on. And that gives you enough context or something, but it's more figuring out how to write those things. In 7,500 line methods, anything could go wrong. What logging is useful in any context there,
right?
It's tough.
Well, I do have to drop because I have my stand up in 3 minutes, but I will probably be back because their stand up's like 10 minutes long.
Cool.
So
that's nice.
I'll probably be back. Just hold the
phone for you.
Hold the
read
phone, yeah.
Read Peter's message to you, by the way.
Read Peter. DFlux, the best thing you can do is introduce a better practices and try and smooth the working path so people can code change. Yeah, that's so when I was talking to them about open telemetry, I was like, I don't think open telemetry is going to replace. We're still going to do all the logging you're currently doing. It's just I want to aggregate all this information in some place where I can look at metrics and like how often it crashes. They also have a lot of try catches, but I am out of time, so I want to just organize.
Yeah, we'll be here.
Before I go. So, yep,
it's only 10 minutes.
We'll bet.
That leaves us. TBD.
It does, yeah. I'm waiting on emails to come in to tell me I can set things up. So, I'm just sat here.
But that is a very interesting discussion to have. Like, what to do telemetry on, and how do you actually use it after you collect telemetry?
Yeah, and also like for what I'm doing, right? It's a distributed system. How do I trace something through the systems, right? How do I know that a notification that I sent to a client came from a particular event or a message out of Kafka? To me, that's a strategy I have to develop. I have to evolve that and design that the same way to develop the rest of the code. So it's kind of why I've deferred it for right now, because I'm making too many changes and everything's in flux as far as how I approach things. So yeah, you're right. it's a discussion unto itself, and I think it should be respected that way.
Because I'm thinking about all of the apps that I'm currently working on, and as a solo developer, I want to know when things go down, because they don't always, or not go down, you know what I mean? Give them errors. They don't always report errors. It's like they just try to find a workaround, and it's like, I don't want you to have to struggle with things and do workarounds in order to get things to work. So one big example is in one of the applications called Chain of Custody, which is that one that's the web form that looks just like the paper form.
Paper form.
if hype it big return player. Hope you're having a great day. We are doing community day, and right now we have tbdgamer, who is also a streamer, amazing streamer, on the line with us, and we are talking about what to log for telemetry and just whatever other topics come up. So, for example, on this form, if they don't enter either a top depth or bottom depth for a given row that has information in it, when they use the next application, it'll error saying that we can't use null values for the depth. And that should be handled in that other application, for one, but for two, like some kind of telemetry telling me what do they normally fill out when they fill out this form. Are there certain fields that they sometimes leave blank?
But the question there is that an error, or is that a validation that's missing from this form?
It's definitely allowed. So the reason these fields are nullable is because they're nullable in the database, so that we can save space.
That doesn't always mean everything.
Well, I mean, like,
is a design as well.
Yeah, well, that one is intentional. Well, used to be intentional.
So on this side of the application, it shouldn't be it should be nullable. It's perfectly acceptable to not have a depth and a bot depth.
Right.
But on the other side, it's an error.
Right.
So the application, so that needs validation.
Yes. Well, that's the hard part, though. So they go into the app, they get the error, and they're like, oh, I need to go back into the form and fill in 0 for top depth and bottom depth, when really it probably is supposed to be null as opposed to 0. But I was never aware of this because I didn't even work on the application, converting the application from VB6 to VB.NET that they use to, it's pretty much taking this form and sending it to a lab, ordering a do analyses based off of this form. So since I never knew that that was a thing, I didn't know that it needed to be fixed in the other app. And then finally, last week, it came up again, and they couldn't remember what was going on, or they just were like, I keep getting this error. Null value or cannot be null. That thing.
Yeah.
No reference exception. And I'm like, okay, I can look into it. I look into it, and I'm like, how long has this been going on?
Yeah. But that's a situation where the consuming application really should have validation in it to tell them that they need to have this data is missing. If it's only if it's a valid case on the producer to allow that, then that's not a problem for the producer. That's a problem for the consumer of that, and that they really should have, that validation, and it shouldn't be an error at all. It shouldn't even get to part of error. It should say, this is not a valid form. Here's the fields that I need.
Right.
And that's, to me, that's kind of, if something's going to error, the worst thing you can do is partially insert data, right? So if I'm
default
doing
it to something for them.
Yeah, you wanna error sooner. I'd rather throw an exception because it can't save anything and roll back a transaction, and then just, if they get an error on the screen, it's up to them to report it, because they're never going to get past it.
Right.
In most cases. And I've been there with users where I've taken that approach where I don't put try catches in. I just put, I do we'd add it so it would alert to Slack. So when a user hit an error, it'd pop a message in Slack and say, there's an error occurred. And then I'd it'd tell me which user because they had the session, and then I'd wait to see how long it took them to call me, and invariably, a day went past, 2 days went past,
Oh,
and
geez.
all they did is kept trying,
Oh,
assuming that
gosh.
someone would. So I kind of trained and then if I was working with the internal users at that point, I basically trained them that if an error occurred, you have to call me, because if you keep, because the way I put it to them is, it keeps binging in my ear and you're pissing me off. Please stop it, because I did have Slack on making noise alerts, so I would call them and say, "Do you have a problem?" So I trained them that they would upset me
Yeah.
if they carried on. And they had to call me when they got the error. So I did get a better turnaround from the users then. I kind of train the users. If you see an error, don't try and work around it.
Right.
I
Yeah.
will happily come to you. I will happily work with you to figure out what went wrong. And that's a luxury you have with an internal system.
You're
But
right.
it is,
Right.
but I have taken the approach on public systems as well. You've got to handle them out. I'm not saying you have to just pop up, argument null exception right to the browser. You
Right.
still have to.
Right.
You should create I do create a top level try catch and hand out to an error screen. An error has occurred. Please contact support if this happens again. Right. That's a common courtesy I think you should give to users. But
And
again,
that
I
is
think
definitely how a lot of ours is. But
the thing is,
go ahead.
sorry.
No, you're good.
I was going to say you've got to make sure you don't save data unnecessarily. In that case, where something could end up with a mess, because then you end up with defensive coding practices around, well, this data could be missing because they could have had an error, and then you end up writing code in response to things that shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Right.
There you go. Sorry.
No, please. No need to apologize. I like hearing that. Especially since I was in the middle of trying to close so I can install an extension. But hi, good VJ. I was going to say something on the actual error handling messages themselves. Oh, the issue with a lot of our legacy apps is the ones that I didn't work on were worked on by, for the first, I think 2 years were worked on by a developer who was only tech support up until the day that I got there. And then they were learning essentially software development as they were working on these apps. And so I gave them this app to convert. And so I have no idea what the app actually looks like inside. And so, as it turns out, they used a lot of the legacy code, which if you've seen VB6, there's a lot of on error resume next or on error go to whatever. And it would just surround the entire logic without actually specifying what the error is. It's just on error, go to this and display this message that says an error occurred, the end.
Yeah.
And then fail.
Yeah.
So it's like the users really don't have any way of saying, well, it's telling me that it couldn't get the data, or it couldn't save this to the whatever, it couldn't submit the form, it couldn't anything. They just say it says an error occurred. Like, okay, any details? No details. Modify. I'm installing installer projects because, again, these are desktop apps. I have no idea. It's been way too long. I have no idea how to deploy a new version of the app for them. I'm sure we had something to do with self-signed certificates and creating an install file and having those manually put on their workstations. Yeah, who needs details? Just make it work. I do love problem solving like that, but when the volume of errors that I was getting while I was working there because of all of the apps was just way too much for one person, or one person and a junior dev. It's crazy.
I think developers, not all developers are comfortable with the whole directing the way software should be done. Like DFlux is trying to introduce good practices. He's trying to improve things, not just for himself, but for the application as a whole. Right? I think a lot of us are deeply invested in making sure that we develop good things, but I don't think all developers are necessarily comfortable with that sort of direction. And they're the developers that we need to help the most, make sure that they're set up for success with the software, because if especially support developers are asked to fix things quickly on the fly, there's a lot more defensive,
and shortcuts too.
because support developers
There's a lot
are
of this just
much,
works. This makes it work. So why not use it?
But again, I say it a lot now because I do believe it, that your code tells a story, and if the story, is telling absolute lies, it's never going to make any sense. So, if this data is null, but that data should never be null by the definition of the actual application.
Right.
It's just null because an error condition has occurred. Then we shouldn't be guarding for it. We should be fixing the upstream problem, not pushing downstream lies in code, because it just makes a mess. And if that brownfield development finally comes around later on, and that code is still there, that code will get ported to the new application, because we're trusting that the old application was doing the job right, and not reviewing the decisions.
And it's called brownfield because you inherit a whole bunch of poop. No, but like when I heard that on your stream the first time, when you were sharing your thoughts and opinions on your code not lying, not telling lies, simply by not doing checks that you don't need to do, because it should never be that value. So for example, all of my less than or equal to zeros for uints or for count, less than or equal to 0. It's never going to be less than 0. So why exactly are we checking for less than?
Yeah. See, to me, if I see that, I think there's a reason why it's less than or equal to 0. I'm like, maybe there's a logic problem that they have, or there's something that's like, it's changed some code somewhere else. So now I'm not. I just got a pushback on a PR. So I've been working on this process to try and refresh the way we do scheduled jobs, and I have hello DFlux, and basically I've lifted existing code and changed nothing about it, and moved this chunk of code into a new class method, because just to try and make sure it now executes in a slightly different way, but to try and avoid any modification to the actual behavior, so that there's no question that it will behave the same way given the piece of information it needs. And I did the PR, and I forgot to even review the code. I reviewed it, I'd run through it. It's not like I didn't do anything, any due diligence there, but the DBA's pushed back and said, this SQL's not up to standard. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get that. He's like, oh, and this will break an index, and this needs to be changed. And I'm like, I'm not changing it, because I'm doing a massive change to the system as is. If I start changing the way the actual job does its thing from the version that's currently running, then it leads into more questions later. What I will do is create tickets for the relevant team to go and review these later, right? Because I do believe it's our responsibility, as if we're reviewing code and we see sort of things like that, to make sure we track those things and make them visible. Oh, we probably need to review this logic's here, it shouldn't be here. Let's make a ticket and keep track of that, so that we have that technical debt visible, because we lose track of technical debt. We know it's there, and then we all just complain about it. Oh, there's a load of technical debt. Oh, yeah, we need to fix it someday, and that day never comes, because the company's never going to go say, yeah, you can have 6 months to fix all the technical debt.
Yeah, I mean, like that was one thing that I tried to. Oh man, I hate using this word in this context because it actually is argue, but that I tried to argue was, if you give us one iteration, even like one release cycle is what I meant. Even 1 or 2 iterations in a release cycle, or the beginning of every single release cycle, we spend the first week just working on all of our tech debt, on all of the things that we noticed while fixing current bugs, implementing new features, and let us improve that, let us work on it, that the quality of the product will go up and we will receive less support calls and bug reports and everything. And they're like, yeah, but that's not adding value. And I had to do my best to explain that it is only adding value if we're able to do that. They're like, but we're paying you to add features that add value. It's like,
Yeah.
but most of our time is spent fixing bugs on these existing features and new features that we're adding on top of it.
Yeah.
I had no way of convincing them.
It's funny, I just had this conversation yesterday with some developers. And basically what I said was, look, I get that we've got to fix things, but we've got to figure out how do we do it in step with everything else. So we've got to take measures like, let's identify the technical debt, let's clear it out when we know we can clean it out, let's make sure that we're keeping a visible track of the fact that we're doing this, and move it forward bit by bit, day by day, to the point where we're more confident in that. Because the problem is, when there's a lot of debt in there, people are less confident about making effective changes. And the moment you introduce a new bug, because you like, I'm going to aggressively refactor this thing, it drops confidence even more. So you got to figure out not only how do we move the application forward, add new features, etc., what is our pattern, but we need to give developers the patterns to say, okay, if you're coming up against this code, here's how you handle this, here's how you document it, here's how you track it, here's how you make explicit commits to make sure that that commit is an actual distinct piece of work. There's discipline and standards, I think, that you should impart on development teams to move things forward. Because again, a business is never going to go, yeah, you can have months to work on technical debt. It's awesome.
Exactly.
I mean, I've had the chance to build I've had the chance a few times in my career to build a greenfield system and brownfield system, right? And it's so much easier working in a greenfield system, right? Because you just don't have all the legacy
you
code
just
to work
start
with.
clean and keep it clean.
But the problem is, if you're asking people who are using that old system how to do things, what you'll end up with is actually you'll end up with the old system, because they'll ask for the things they're doing today. So you've got to know the right questions to ask.
Right.
And if you're looking at existing code, again, those lies mount up and stuff. So you've got to be smart about how you develop things. And even greenfield systems, they're a hard sell because it has a lot of time to build an application.
Right.
If I'm building Liquid Sky,
unless you have accelerators.
Yeah. If I'm building something like Liquid Sky, yeah, I probably could have got some of the pieces working a bit faster. Well, a lot faster, if I'd have not focused on the things I focused on. But no company's going to go for that as a development, because it's like 10 months to get to where I am. Now, solo dev, 10 months. I actually think there's a lot there for 10 months of work. And we're not talking 40-hour weeks there. We're talking maybe 12 hours a week. Yeah. But they're not going to go for that. So you've got to figure out. It's easy to ask for and then gripe about, but I think you've got to be prepared to figure out a reasonable solution. And a lot of it you can do without even telling the company you're doing it. You've just got to make it part of your practices, but make it a consistent part of your practices.
Yeah, as long as you're delivering in the end and showing them a deliverable, then you're good to go to make whatever changes on the side. It's just balancing that. That's really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, 10 months, like, again, I converted all of these applications. Those aren't the apps, that's the database. All of these applications essentially in 1 year, from JSP to MVC. And that was just pretty much straight copy and pasta over, changing Java to C#. And it was the same mess that we began with. Trying to clean it up from there, it was a stupid idea, but they needed it done in that amount of time. I really wanted to just be like, all right, since we are changing languages even, let's make this clean to begin with. But no, lots and lots of shortcuts. Here's an example of the whole try catch. Just surround the entire thing you're trying to do with the try catch, and then when you catch, just throw.
Oh, Oh, so okay. Can you talk a little bit more about that? 'Cause that's another one of the things I've run into. There is try catches every freaking where in in the current project I'm looking at, and this is obviously you're looking at VB, right? Obviously, this is looks like VB. Is it VB?
It is.
BB, yeah.
Yep. This is obviously Blazor, but they have try catches in every little thing. And I'm also trying to understand a little bit, like again, what terms do developers use to describe this sort of workflow, and what leads people to want to put try catches everywhere. Because for me, like, well,
Keeping the
for me-
app from crashing. That's the only reason.
right, but even, I guess I did look at the freaking error boundaries, and I am still unimpressed by them. There should really be an error boundary that has like an event that you could subscribe to, and then there's some easy code that you could use to like reload the instance of the application, right, to like sort of sidestep an error. But that hasn't seemed to be built. I don't know if that's a .NET 9 thing or not. I have no idea. But the fact that there's no event for like when an exception is thrown at the component visual layout, right? I'm talking about Razor.
Yeah, where it just crashes and then the app stops responding because you lose your circuit connection and everything goes to poop. But yeah, I think they introduced the error boundary thing in .NET 6, I want to say. It was either 6 or 7, but
Maybe been 5 actually.
really, I don't remember seeing it in 5.
I don't remember.
I
don't
remember.
remember. What I was about to say. So obviously, that's sort of my question a little bit in your direction, Mr. 119, which is how do you do it currently? What's your current, other than telling the user please refresh the page?
Again, I make sure that the app doesn't crash. I write code that doesn't crash the app. Well, first of all, I'm not actually using Blazor Server, so it's not that big of an issue. With Blazor WebAssembly, you just get the little orange or tan bar at the bottom,
right.
But the app still keeps working. So it's not like...
So you don't have any Blazor Server? Well, so you don't have any Blazor Server?
Right, like I set up every single one of the apps with both projects, Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly, but I only deploy Blazor WebAssembly.
Gotcha. And is that something that you intend to keep doing, or do you have plans to have like the stuff you're working on right now to have? Are you? So obviously the Sogeti stuff was like an actual desktop app, so that's slightly.
Right.
And then the stuff you done prior was WebAssembly. Is there?
Which is what I'm back to, by the way.
Yes. Yep. Well, it sound like from what you were describing, you have like a multitude now of this and another one, right? So you have perhaps a lot on your plate. So I appreciate you streaming, by the way. Thank you.
Oh no, I mean it's only this job. It's only the RMA now. It used to be both Sogeti and RMA, and then I stopped with Sogeti, and now I'm doing only RMA.
Oh, okay, awesome. Well, I still really do appreciate your stream, but that's good because I know when you said you were doing all of that, I was like, oh man, OneWorld's going to burn out, and Twitch streamers going to go bye-bye. If you work 80 hours a week for eventually.
Yeah, I finally got back to the point where I get to spend all of my evenings and weekends with just my wife and do whatever we do.
Sweet.
It's so nice.
Yep. Well, so are you ever going to do Blazor Server with this stuff?
The answer is I am now going to use .NET 8 and above for all of my Blazor apps. So yeah, I've already converted 2 of them to .NET 8. And so I have them on render mode auto, which is kind of like doing both Blazor Server and WebAssembly, but it's all the same to me because it's here's my UI.
Right.
They react the same regardless of which mode you're running in. Here's my API essentially on the back end if you can't use the service directly, blah, 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 blah. So it's the same.
And so obviously with error being so do you do anything different for the error handling when they're in the server mode, or you just tell the user if you see that yellow bar, hit refresh?
Yeah, I do error handling. Yeah, I just don't get the yellow bar. The worst that can happen is they lose internet connection, and that gives them the yellow bar that disconnects Blazor Server if they haven't
So you do try catches, you do error handling, is what you're saying, or you do something different?
Yes, it is. It is try catches, and most of it is in the services.
Mhm.
So I don't really do it in the UI as much, but I do need to start doing it more in the UI as far as using the error boundary component specifically.
Okay.
That would be nice, but it's mostly I'm looking for services. Does anyone see services? No. So on the client side, if you're running in WebAssembly render mode or whatever it's called, then my HTTP client requests all have this pattern of try, catch, and then depending on the type of exception, it's handled differently. And then I add errors to my model for the UI so that when we display a message to the user, it's meaningful and they know where the error happened.
Gotcha. So there's an exception there, and so and you've got like a funky. This is what I get good at this, because this is something that I saw you do. You've mentioned this previously, and you use those little funky interfaces to allow you to return either the contents or an error.
Right.
Back down.
Yeah, and it's just a
from your
model,
service
is
layer
all it
into
is.
your- Well, Mojo was. I was mentioning that to Mojo. I actually had to hop off of it, go to bed when Mojo was working on a particular thing. But he was having the exact same issue where he was trying to determine what HTTP response. He's still tired. What HTTP response to return, because sometimes there's going to be 200, sometimes there's going to be other things. But he wanted to do that. Didn't want to do that in the controller. He wanted to like move off the logic and do the business in the service. But then, how do you return that type? And that's through these interfaces.
Yeah.
Which I've got to do something similar as well.
Yeah, and this to me, I think it's common. I think I've seen other people do it. I thought it was a good approach when I did it, and then I started seeing it more. But my model is essentially a decorator on the data response itself. So here's the list of stuff that you're looking for. Here's the single object that you're looking for. Here's the int or whatever. And then here's all of this other information that you might want. Like
now, just so I can copy and paste directly your work and put it in my project. Is this in the finance manager plan, or do you have a
let's
different
find
approach?
out. Let's find out. I'm pretty sure that I use response model in everything. So most likely.
Refreshingly honest.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's no point in hiding it, because I am definitely I want to do this sort of approach with an interface.
I have a version of it, yes. Oh, actually, this looks almost exactly the same. And it even uses fluent validation. So I can add fluent validation errors.
Apparently, just to shout out, apparently LIVECODING's got a really cool video on solid principles, which I shall check out if you want to link that in Discord or somewhere, Mojo. Yeah, so I will have to do something like this. I think in my own project, because I don't have any error. Like I don't have any actual error messages that goes to the user. I just error. And that's
Yeah, essentially it's just you get this add error method that I put in here, and it'll, if you're adding a string, it'll add it to the error messages list, and then you can render out your message using as HTML or render error if you want it as render fragment. But add error, an exception, it can take an exception, which you should only really use exception if you're doing it on the server or if you are in development mode. So this was one of those cases that I think TBD mentioned where I am logging out the entire exception into my event viewer when I'm catching them, because if I'm catching them, then it's no longer getting written to the event viewer when it actually happens on the server.
Yeah, I think logging exceptions in particular is something definitely that's what logging is for, right?
I would say yes. I don't know for sure. I haven't studied it or checked what best practices are, but they've been very helpful for me. So Yes.
Yeah, so I definitely, and the Mojo definitely, I would encourage this for your thing, so you don't have to pass around. Right now, his solution was simply to pass around the iAction result into the service, which basically negates the reason to have it. Now you're just doing a lot of the control stuff inside the service.
Right.
Sorry, excuse me.
That was weird.
Jesus.
Bless you. I think.
Oh my, I'm sorry if you guys have to hear that. I really do apologize.
Were you trying to find the mute button and you're like,
I can't find it. I couldn't find it. I really couldn't.
no.
Down the bottom.
Perhaps.
I've learned it's Alt A or whatever in frickin' for Zoom.
Wasn't too bad, says Juan Van. Yeah, Juan Van, I really don't know what PWC means in the context of domestic relationships. Matching PWC adventures.
Yeah, Mojo said his solution was actually to hard code a few things, but I mean, if you have time, you're trying to make that project look really good. That's something you said you want to present going forward. Definitely, definitely consider. And then so obviously this then essentially, if there's something goes wrong, this then returns a message to the user, and if it's Blazor server, you just notify the user, "Boof, there was a problem." And you go that route. There's a lot of stuff in the current project that I'm looking at that has a ton of stuff that's in code-defined files, as opposed to what I think they should probably be in a service. But because I don't want to have that. I guess here's a question for you: in all your Blazor codes here, in all your projects, do you have any regions inside of your code behind or Razor?
Yes. I love regions. Okay, you can judge me on it, but I love regions.
No, not in class files. I'm talking about in a Razor component.
Yeah, even there.
In a code behind. In code block.
Can I think of one? What is this? Water management. Let's go to checklist, actually.
Okay.
Or no, my filter popover.
Oh, you got CSS in there. Ooh.
Yeah. Okay, for my filter popover, there are some. Nope. How about treatment plant page? Okay, yeah. So treatment plant page, code behind, which is Razor, has some regions for grouping some of my local variables, and then I have helper functions somewhere.
Okay, but that's only 200 lines long.
Only two. This is a code behind file though, which is 200 lines is a little much.
So I guess when I say when I'm thinking of regions, that's what 200 is a little bit much. But when I'm thinking of regions, they're using it because the code behind files are getting really big. To me, which is like leads me to believe that basically we're not componentizing appropriately. This code behind file I'm in right now is 2,272 lines long for a code behind, 2,200. To me, that's like, well, that's just and again, correct me, pushback if you think. To me, that's just like you're not using the tool appropriately. Blazor components aren't designed to have these massive things. You're supposed to componentize out, break this up to 3 or 4 different components, and then use something like a service for the stuff that isn't supposed to be. They have models in here and a bunch of other stuff. This needs to be.
Well, again, I would say that it's designed to let you structure it however you feel is appropriate for your app, but yes, I would agree with you that best practice would be to componentize stuff. Like I could have a switch statement up here that says render out the actual HTML for a carbon data grid or plant flow data grid and have all of that code in this file along with the logic for each one of those in the code behind, but that really doesn't make sense. But then do you go as far as turning each one of these data entry sections into its own component? Because then that would get rid of my handlers for when each of these values change. I could do that. but it just made sense to. Actually, now that I'm saying that out loud, it would be nice if. Because I use this pattern for just about all of my input fields.
Yeah, I mean, even this page, the file you're looking at is a very comparably small file. Razor component, right? So this is not like like the issue that I'm running into is I'll open a .razor file and this is perhaps an issue with Blazor, and TBD can join in, is that Visual Studio struggles with syntactically highlighting all this stuff in these massive Razor files. If I scroll, it like has to catch up with me. And again, to me, that's an indicator that you're basically wielding the tool incorrectly. You've got a hammer and you're hitting a nail, yes, but you're actually using a sledgehammer on a teeny little nail, or vice versa, something like this.
Pike. Interesting.
So yeah, so I run into that a little bit, and I was like, we really should componentize this stuff out to make it. But then I was reading the best practices docs, and the best practices docs was like, hey, for every time you add a component, it adds like a 0.2 millisecond load time to Blazor. So they're like, don't do it a ton. I'm like, well, so there's definitely a balance. But a lot of the code, the reason why the code is so long is there's try catches inside try catches inside try catches. I think it was Peter said something. I forget who said it. Maybe it was Mojo. It was like when you don't error, you try again, which is what the process here in this code is.
Try up to 3 times. That would be mine.
Yeah.
If you fail, try up to 3 times more.
And I guess they're using the and I know you have a habit of writing all your own CSS stuff. They're using the Redstone library, and so maybe the Redstone library is not that easy at making it not error, perhaps. But I'm trying to understand the underlying reason why they would like to have try catches everywhere, as opposed.
And like
to
I said,
not.
it really the reason that I have seen people defaulting to just throwing try catches everywhere is because they don't understand the code that they're writing, so they don't know what errors might come of it, so they don't know how to actually write in a slightly defensive way but not over defensive, so that I don't make TBD start twitching, in a somewhat defensive way that's appropriate for what you're doing. And 2, because they don't want a crash to make the whole application stop, so they would rather handle that error and then just display some generic message to the user that says it failed, try again, and then the user keeps trying again and it fails for the same reason every time. But that's somehow better than the application itself crashing.
Yeah.
So I guess reason number 1 would be the one that can be addressed, which is knowing what the code is supposed to do and what errors you are expecting to see happen that you should guard against, that you can't really do anything about, or they're so rare that you don't want to invest the effort.
Yeah, and a lot of these try catches too. Just looking over them now, none of these try catches are actually notifying the user something went wrong. They just return like an empty object or something, which is like it's even more problematic than crashing the app, like silently crashing and then not doing what you said you're going to do. Right. It's like, to me, more problematic than just say, hey, the app crashed, refresh.
Yeah, so at minimum, just say the operation failed. Welcome back.
Sorry. I was going to say, what you'll find there is you probably find stuff on the other side of that saying, oh, if the object's null, then something must have gone wrong. So now you've got code on the other side kind of preparing for that coming back as an empty object.
You know what my favorite one of those is? When it's supposed to return a number and they say, well, -3 stands for this kind of error, -2 stands for this kind of error.
Yeah, they have a little bit of that. So they have a lot of magical strings. So like, for instance, that component I was talking to you about, they pass. So it's actually 2 different forms in the one form. And so I'm like, first of all, that just didn't make sense to me. But I'm like, all right, whatever, sounds good. So they have they pass in a string, and then they read that string to work out what what cells in the form to show. And I'm like, why don't you just have 2 components and then you don't have to do any of that? But they pass
Yeah,
a
where
lot
the
of strings
component
around.
itself has the logic for should I display or not.
Yeah. They have a lot of strings, magical strings doing things. And I'm a particular fan of, and I think you are too, like you have there, is that like the methods themselves, like so with Blazor, there's like 2 ways you could do it, right? So let's say you have like a bool that's bound to some visual thing, right? And then let's say you have a method. Let's say you have a method that's split up between 3 different methods of when to change that bool. Let's say there's some logic about it, right? So you could either constantly reference the publicly shared bool to determine if it's true or false, or you could pass it along the method chain and only change it once you have an actual, reply or response or decision. I'm the fan of the latter, but it seems these guys are a fan of the former, where they will just have multiple methods that dial into those components and then change what's needed, and then they're not passing the. You get what I'm saying? They're not like passing around the objects. They're just dialing into the shared space in the instance of the component.
I could
Do
see
you have
both
any?
ways. Yeah.
You can see both ways.
Yeah.
I have a preference towards the latter. I prefer that the method itself, the signature really say, this is in the signature, this is what I need to run this method, then
Right.
does whatever it does, and then returns to a parent method that then rebinds that back to the shared.
I mean, I guess an example of that, and this is just to make sure that we're on the same page, I guess. So here's a generic class, essentially.
Okay.
And it takes in a data type. So like carbon data comes from the carbon data table. Operation maintenance data comes from the operation maintenance table, but they all have the same structure of treatment plant data, which has treatment plant flow type, date, and plant name. Wait, that's this one. Anyway, those filter type. So they all have this basic structure, and so they all get sent into here. What I could do is make one method per type of data. And that's what I think you're saying you would prefer.
So like I guess I'm thinking more closer to the UI in terms of, like, say for instance they'll have a method, like I mentioned, that says I'll see if I can go to one of your, I guess, co-behinds real quick that does some random things. I'll see if I can just eyeball you a method that I can say
you keep clicking on the says
way.
So here, this is actually a base component, but yes.
You have it on instalize, then you have a thing, then you're saying handle, then a refresh, passing a bool. I'll get some args. What's this here? We got get data async. You have the
which is for refreshing any one of those data grids that can be any one of those. So here's a plant flow data grid. Here's a carbon data grid, which is presented on the same page, same component, but different columns.
Like,
and
so you have that. I see you have that radio that has the preliminary record and final record.
Right. Yep. So this is
so
filter type.
Is there a? Oh, that's not real time. That's not an event. Well, that's
so what you're looking for are more like real time events. Okay.
Perhaps maybe I'm not really good. This is what, and I appreciate you taking time to. I'm not really good with the verbiage on some of this stuff. No
worries.
Of what a professional dev might call it.
Yeah. So for example, I have a filter. There was a question. What?
I just said you are a professional.
Oh. Yes.
Well, I guess I'm more thinking of like I never went academics for like the actual science and what terms you might use to decipher things. Like I'm not familiar with anything other than what I've learned, put it that way. I guess that's not really a good way of putting it.
You're
but yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I am.
Adsorbers. Okay, so in my adsorbers, I have this, and as I'm
Mhm.
typing, it filters the list in real time. Is that something that you're
Okay.
talking about?
Yeah, so basically, when you're typing that, you have an event that's associated with that. In
Right.
that event signature, do you pass in the object of that this string EFF, or do you have this bound to something that's in the like a string that's in the Razor file, and then that's what you reference inside the method?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's bound. It's a at bind.
Right, but
Here it is. Oh no!
But yeah, so you have
Or
that.
yes, yeah. It's
Yeah, yeah.
at bind to filter. And sorry, it's
And then
like
in
split like this, but I have it on my other
Yeah.
monitor, so it's wide
No.
enough. But
no big deal.
so I do have an at bind to filter
So
text.
Yep, which you have to do anyway, right?
Yeah,
You
or
know,
I don't have to.
but-
No, I could do an
Well-
at on change update filter text.
And then that method that you have there, handle blah blah blah.
And this one
That
is we can ignore this because it's really just for
It's bind
updating
off.
the actual filter
Well,
that
that's
gets sent to
bind
the
event.
database. Yeah.
Okay, so the on input fires. So let's go look at the signature for the on input.
Oh, on input is just telling that every time you type a character, then
Okay.
do the binding. So the way that the list updates is that
Oh, okay. So
the-
so yeah, okay.
the list is filtered items, which does get updated here. I just recently changed this. That's why I'm a little confused about it. Filtered items will be the items that got passed into this dot select, essentially, or dot where.
So that
Based on
you sort
whether
of
it's a
sidestepped in that particular example. You sidestepped the question in terms of not you saying, but I mean your code negates the necessity to do what it. But you're sort of also doing it there as well.
Well, yeah, this is what it used to look like before I started adding this date mess. So filtered items was just a read-only property that was the
Yeah.
items.where the text contains filter text.
Yeah, like that sort of, like I say, sort of sidesteps the issue. You don't have to contend with it. But do you have? I mean, I'm still digging through the methods you're in right now, or that Razor file that you're in. Is there any methods? I'm trying to find a good example.
Okay, so when I do a change to this select dropdown, I use the on after change event.
Okay, yeah. Let's go look at that real quick, if you don't mind.
Okay.
That's more like it that I'm thinking of, like an event that gets triggered.
Selected operator. Oh, it's inside of this component because I turned that dropdown into a component.
Yes, here you go. So you pass in the change event args e. Yes, here you go. So here's what you're doing the way I would much prefer, which is you're inspecting the contents of the event e, right? E.value, as opposed to even though it's probably bound to something, right? Which is
It
the
isn't in
select
this
operation.
case, actually.
Something, is it not? It's not
Yeah,
bound?
it would be at bind operation, like selected operator.
Right. And so, like, even if you had it bound right there, I would discourage the use of like firing the event and then expect using the select operator. I'd much rather the signature be whole, as I guess what I'm saying. But that again, that's something like that they have here, where they, rather than doing that, they just have methods that like dial into things that are
Why am I not using a bind?
Well, you didn't need to.
Oh, because I need to tell it to invoke the event on change. Yeah, I still think I would do this different. I'm gonna change it. So yeah, I am trying to follow the difference that you're trying to explain. But what I'm seeing is like there are times when I am making the arguments that get passed into a method specific to each thing, even if it's essentially the same operation on each different object type. So if one took an int, another took a date, but they both changed the query to filter on either the numeric field or the date field, then I would still prefer to have them separate like that for readability. But I could also see having them in just one that says filter on, and then it inside of the logic it determines, well, is this a date, is this a number? I don't know if that's anywhere close.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, but no, it's like a slightly boring topic, but yeah. So I guess, yeah. I just there's a lot I got to do at this place. I guess is my thing. There's just seems to be a lot. There's a lot of things, and I don't want to go. You know, you gotta be willing to steer where you gotta be willing to steer. You know, because you don't want to go. You don't wait too long and be polite for so long. That like steal those bad razor files that we did like the first 6 months you're employed. Well, we ain't got time to change those. You know what I mean? That would be regrettable.
Ooh. Would you two? Oh man, there's only like 5 minutes left. I was gonna say, would you two mind conversing for a second? I need to step away.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, by all means.
Okay.
Sure.
We're back to. I was gonna say. I was about to mention if you only got 5 minutes left. The other thing that's like, and I discussed with you the async void game. They've got a lot of async voids. I'm trying to work out the again, trying to understand a little bit what the reason behind why you'd want to have them, and then, you know, methodologies to essentially get out of that problem, because that's ticking time bomb.
Have you written a program for yourself yet to demonstrate to yourself?
So I did create a unit test to like demonstrate like an error, like in the try catch not being actually hit.
Right.
I've got to go back to it because I didn't quite perfect it, but that's another one of those areas where I have a little bit. So the strat right now, if I share my strategy is nobody at my current, not that nobody, that's the wrong word. They don't have a unit test plan right now, meaning that I have that's in a way a greenfield part of the application. So I'm hoping to use that creatively to demonstrate why you might not want to do things, because they can't really say you shouldn't put that in a unit test, because they're like, please put anything you want in a unit test. We don't have any. So that means I'm going to take that liberty, and then there's going to be a unit test that says, look, I've run through this method 10 times, and 9 times out of 10 it didn't work as expected. You know, even the one time that that it does or whatever. Yeah. So that's my strat right now in terms of some of these things I'm talking about. And then, so that was also a really good question with C#, which is, I don't think if you don't have methods that have complete signatures, it makes them very difficult to unit test. So I look at this method, I'm looking at one right now called event type selected, and on like the 5th line of the method, it just calls some random string that's like been edited elsewhere randomly. You know, not entirely randomly, but in a different way. And so if this method had in the signature the name of the string, right, and then you have a parent that's calling that, it'll be a lot more easier to unit test this method, because then everything is included here. The method I can just unit test the method. I don't have to worry about anything else. So that's why I would want to go that way.
Yeah, I mean, okay. The challenge you have with unit testing methods that exist in an environment that's where you don't have unit testing is, first you've got to tackle the challenge of dependencies. You've got to tackle all the code that's been written that's really not unit testing friendly. So you might be able to do it, but you're going to have to change a lot of code to do it. And so now again, coming back around to that expert thing, how confident from what I know, you've only just really started trying to do unit testing. Right, so you're gonna have to promote being an expert at unit testing to introduce unit testing.
It's one of the things where, and you may recall, and 1-1-line certainly recalls, how many times I've had in the 1-1-line stand up have I said I am going to go do unit testing. It's been like, I think I've done it for a month. So I have spent a fair amount of time. It's just in this particular case.
But the problem is, it's easy to write useless unit tests.
Yes,
it's to write good unit tests. So even if you introduce unit testing as a practice, you've now got to enforce it and train people to do it. So if again, you've got to have a lot of confidence in your ability to understand and comprehend how to adapt the code, because otherwise it just seems like difficulty and extra work, and developers are never going to go for that, right? So you got to fight that battle. We've had the same thing where we have a bunch of developers that are like, so we need to unit test. So if I look at the code, I can see, you know, there's like 10 developers, there's 20 different styles of unit testing, right? So how do you get those developers to come around? How do you get those developers to stay on track and to stay on focus? And how do you, because you got to keep an eye on it. That's the big challenge. You gotta make sure you're because inconsistent unit testing is worse than no unit testing.
Yeah, that's certainly true. We are rather fortunate in the sense that because they have a really good testing. We have a couple, UAT professionals that are just doing UAT, and they are very, very good at catching literally everything. So we are fortunate in that regard. That's where I was explaining a little bit earlier before 113 you came back. Welcome back. With the strategy that I have right now in terms of what I'm looking at is they don't have any unit tests. He's not his headphones on, I don't think. Maybe perhaps.
No, I do. I said I heard, or I didn't. I said I heard before I unmuted my mic.
Okay.
I was just saying I have Bluetooth headphones.
Oh, very good. I won't have to re-explain. Yeah, so yeah, the strategy is I'm going to go ahead and use the unit testing development as a greenfield, and I'm going to go ahead and try and use that as an excuse to refactor some of this bad code and then demonstrate that. But I am hoping in part, in a kind of way, to write useless unit tests in a way, because it's more about getting the process down for me than it is like about is to put it this way, if I wrote a bunch of really, really crucial unit tests on day one, I better sure as hell be right, as opposed to writing a bunch of harmless unit tests, right, that nobody relies on right away. I'm okay with like learning as I go on it and this sort of thing. I think I have a good handle on it.
One thing to consider though, you're a unit test around that async void behavior is more of an integration than it is a unit, because you're actually testing behavior. You're actually wanting to demonstrate the different behavior of the actual language as well. So it's more of an integration test with the language than it is a unit test around your code behavior as well. That's a clear distinction you probably want to make sure you are making as well. The reason I asked if you'd written a little program just to test it is so you can understand the impact that poses and maybe demonstrate it to some people, so you can actually get that thing changed. I would say that's more of a challenge right now, to demonstrate this needs to be fixed because this is the side effect of this.
Yes,
this is the actual side effect. You're assuming it's working, but it's not working. It's not saving you in certain cases. It's just going to disappear, and it doesn't work quite the way you expect. So I would say you need to. I'd focus on that as an independent thing. I'd still go the unit testing. I fully agree with. I'm mindful of the challenges I've faced in the last couple of weeks as to what I'm about to start doing and getting developers on track and making sure you're not offending people. These are all challenges that I definitely have to a minefield I have to navigate now, and I've been doing it for a while. Right, I'm still cautious of that. So I'm just kind of, in a way, I'm kind of relaying the thoughts in my head.
Well, so I will divert. I do have actually mentioned async await question. In the async await documentation, they say please do avoid this, other than if you're doing events.
Right.
We are doing events, so we're using async void in that context.
Gotcha.
My understanding is, or the way I got around that is I have like when I do the events, I have like a function, a task, so they become async.
Right.
This has been my typical approach. Do you guys still use like the traditional event thing that's like not awaitable, or do you?
I was trying to show that. I have a few examples of that open. So one of them is if you're using a timer, for example, the elapsed event is it expects a signature of void in your callback method. And so if you do anything async in that, such as invoking status change, because I can't do just a status change here because it doesn't own the thread that was, like if we were in server, for example, the calling method doesn't own the UI thread, or it isn't on the UI thread. So I need to switch to the UI thread, tell it to re-render, and then, And so I need to use
I am I correct in my assumption here, or the way I understand async void is, let's say instead of stated change, you actually called a method inside there, and it has awaited. And let's say inside that method you errored. This parent method might have already returned, and so you won't
Right.
necessarily be able to hit that error or try catch or do things
Well,
like
even
that.
if it had returned by that point, you still would lose the exception stack.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you'd lose. So even if there was a try catch inside that method, right, it wouldn't matter because
Right.
this.
I mean, it would.
is-
You could still, like one of the things that I learned from Brandon Minnick, there's a really good async await video that he did,
I think I've
is
seen that.
his
You've mentioned
fire
it
and
before.
forget method. I would recommend just grabbing that. Because one of the things that it allows you to do is do your async void even and be able to keep error handling and stack trace and all of that using fire and forget.
Okay. Well, okay, so but the reason why these aren't really method calls, right? So that's why you're not doing it here.
Right. Yeah. So these are
So
event handlers, so it wouldn't really work, I guess, for these. But yes, President Not Sure, I did see the updated one too, and it's fantastic.
And this is the way you currently do it. Because I know in .NET 9 they're going to change the whole event system, right? So there probably will be a asynchronous way to do events, I assume.
Hopefully, I mean, like you could use event callback currently, but really that only allows for one event callback handler.
I want to say that there is an async version of timer.
I don't know. Potentially. Maybe. I'd have to look for it.
There's probably a third-party package for it, but yeah. So I guess that's really my question. Let's say right now let's say you had joined, whatever. You're looking at this code and you're told, hey, let's improve this code. Would one of the steps you do would just find a way to employ an asynchronous timer, or would you say no, it's okay to just leave that as async void and that's okay?
Yeah, like if I was refactoring this wouldn't be on my list of concerns to do right away unless there was a known.
Like, let's say you want to do a database call in that code block right there.
Okay.
Right. Wouldn't that you would again, and maybe without doing what you just had mentioned about using like the fire and forget, you would never be able to know if that database call actually succeeded without going and looking at the logs or whatever and hoping it's there. There's no way for it to like concretely know, right, if the database was ever called.
Yeah, if there was an exception. But because of the way that I have my code structured, I would have some object, some response model that lets me know was error. So even if the HTTP request is the one that failed and gave me an exception, I would have caught that exception, put it in the response model, and the app would know. So all of the error handling is happening in a way that my async void wouldn't need to catch any exceptions.
Gotcha, because this isn't essentially, this is just the event from a timer, so this isn't actually returning to any parent method.
I mean, it could. So this could be a type ahead thing where you're typing on the keyboard, you stop for 250 milliseconds, the timer times out and then does this and then queries the database for filtered items from your list. So that could happen in here. But same thing.
Yeah.
The call to the database is the one that has all of the exception handling so that even if that does fail, it gives us a graceful and meaningful message back that is not crash the app.
And that would work even if, let's say this code was triggered by a button press or something. On an event that would still work. You'd still be able to log it.
It would, but I wouldn't need to use async void at that point in time.
Right. No, you wouldn't. But let's say you did buy it because you're just my colleague.
I guess, yeah, if you're using WinForms, then the code behind for event, I don't know if it's changed by now, but the code behind for event handling clicks and stuff is synchronous.
Well, this is all Blazor server. But,
yeah, okay. If I was your colleague, then I would be ashamed. So much shame.
Well, that's the thing. I'm trying to understand, you know, what would make someone to do it, and then what are the actual consequences. Because from what you're saying is that it doesn't look. Yeah, I'm looking at one right now. It's a button click called, you know, aptly named on app roll, and it calls an async void. And to me, that's like,
Yeah,
you don't need to do that.
for that. No.
Yeah.
So if you had an
but I'm-
on click, then
and inside that
just change
async
it to
void-
task.
Right. And inside async, and that's what I've done in some of the cases. But I that's not. I've got a ticket that says fix my code yet. So you know what I mean.
So not much you can do with it. But that,
right,
again, TBD mentioned this earlier. That would be one of those instances where you could log into the backlog. Here is this thing that I encountered, so check for other places in the code that have async void and review them.
Right. And so I guess, and they have a method inside here, and I guess I'm just trying to understand, and you've probably actually answered this question before. So they have inside there, they have a try catch, and inside that they have a asynchronous task that they await, and inside that there's a try catch inside there. My understanding is that if that try catch hits, if there's an exception, we'll never know, because the parent is an async void, and so it's returning instantly.
If I did throw new not implemented exception here, then I wouldn't see it ever.
You wouldn't see it ever. Okay, that's my understanding, and that's that start page. Is that the timer one, or is that a different one?
This is the timer one.
This is the timer one.
Anything that's async void, or that you do. So let's say that this was a proper task. You did task.run. That also has a habit of swallowing exceptions.
That's a set and forget. Sorry. Yeah. So that's one of the things where, as a unit test, I got that was one of the things I want to unit test. Produce a unit test that demonstrates why you wouldn't want to do this. So in the unit test, it's going to be like, get every single method here, and then throw an exception inside it and see if you actually catch the exception or something like that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Or maybe, I mean, yes. Like you would have to, if you were going to write a unit test for it, you would have to have a way to say it should throw an exception for that method, and then call it in a way where it should throw an exception, and then have it not throw an exception.
I think the way I ended up doing it, and again, I'll have to review the code because I closed it, but I had a try catch, and then in the catch, I set a bool to true, and that was how you know it passed, because the actual catch worked. And in the try, I have a throw exception. But if it's called by an async void task, the try catch never comes back as true. It's always...
Wait, I mean, the try catch within the... Yeah, we'd have to talk about that more, but I do need to go. But the try catch within the async void should still work. It's raising exceptions inside of the async void.
Oh, well, so the try catch would be in an awaited child method. So the inside here, inside this async void, there's something else that says await this method.
Yeah, so let's say that we had tasks. Oops. And then try.
Yep.
So if we called this some other method, row, and then we awaited some other method, then this would fail silently.
Right. Yeah, and and again, in my scenario, it's not an event, it's actually a button click, and so that button click is immediately returned regardless of if there's anything in there.
Yeah, but here's the other thing though. If you have something like this, where your catch is not just rethrowing the exception or anything, it's handling it and then continuing, then the rest of this method will continue as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like the try catch has no meaning.
Right.
It still works.
But let's say that so it still works. So let's say in that try catch there was like a log to a database. That log to a database, would it work or would it not?
Yeah, it should work. As long as the DB context is created within
right.
That block.
Yep.
Because if you're passing a DB context here,
so the try catch would work, but we just wouldn't know that it worked.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't see any exceptions. reported exceptions.
Right.
So this would be the thing to try. It's create something that is an async void method, await it in on after render or on initialize. I must leave. He's right. Because I need to I need to
thank
go
you
back
the
to building.
explanation. Yep. I appreciate you so much. Thank you online.
Yeah,
I love the
absolutely. You got to
stream.
do a stand up though.
Yeah. Sorry,
Since
I
you're
haven't been
still
in here
here.
the past few Fridays. I've obviously. So what's the stand up? I
Yeah,
gotta
COVID.
say, what I'm currently working on I really did struggle with trying to get motivated to do any work because of the code that I'm looking at. There's a lot of problems in it. And then they're handing me tickets where I have to like loop over something on a database, which why won't A, the code's bad, B, I'm now making the code worse, and that's okay. All right, we'll do it anyway. So that's been my experience so far. And what I'll be working on is the same thing I'll be working on. I said 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, which is unit tests to better demonstrate these things.
Perfecto. And I take it no blockers because you're able to just work on the unit tests.
Well, yeah, blockers. They're really not motivated by it, but that's the really only blocker.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Any last words for the kind people that are here listening and watching?
Yeah, remember to hit that like button if you're watching the VOD. Thank you for watching the VOD. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. It'd
be interesting to see if YouTube does the automatic making the like button go when you say
really
that.
quickly. I was watching one of those body cam videos that the cops have, and in the body cam they're like pulling over a DUI person, and the gal kept saying like. She's like this is happening, and the light goes off, but she was like doing really bad grammar, so it was hilarious.
So it does it more than once per video?
No, I think it was only once, but she kept saying you have to say. I think you have to say like and something else, or I forget exactly. But she used it as she had used it at the end of a sentence, and then the start of a sentence had to be another word which triggered it. I forget exactly.
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
Yep.
But yeah, thank you so much once again.
Thank you. I'll let you get back to it.
Right. Yep. And thank you to TBD who is also here, and Peter. Thank you for keeping me honest. My armpit is itching suddenly. Molly Shannon, anyone? Okay. Anyway, wonderful times here on the stream. Thank you all for hanging out with us as long as you did. It looks like one of my friends that I have not been able to raid in quite a while is for keeping it bitchin'. Yes. Simple Game Dev has been working on his game Artificial for a while now. It is getting pretty close to release. He says if he has 10,000 wishlisters, he'll release the prologue game to it, which is a free teaser game. Essentially, it's kind of like a full demo, or a full game, but a demo to the full game. So he says once it reaches 10,000 likes or wish lists, he is going to release it, and then hopefully shortly after that release Artificial. It's gonna be great, unless it was the other way around, but whatever. That's it for me though. I will be back again on Monday with a regular stream where we will continue on our journey with the UI redesign, get all of it implemented. And if you're interested in seeing any of the previous videos or anything, you can check it out on the YouTubes. And feel free to join our Discord if you are interested. You don't have to. It's pretty quiet, pretty laid back, really cool people there. And lastly, just enjoy all of the people, all of the amazing streamers that are on Twitch that are just, I love this community so much. Okay, ciao for now. Juice. See you next time, whenever you show up.